The Forgotten War of Echo Valley. The war buried by time. History remembers the Great Wars, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, the Civil War, but hidden in the classified archives of the U.S. Army lies a conflict so strange, so unbelievable, that it was erased from every public record. It happened not overseas, but on American soil. A battle fought in silence, a war no newspaper ever printed, a conflict that lasted only 9 days, yet changed the course of U.S. military strategy forever. The operation was known internally as Project Iron Signal, but among the few surviving soldiers who dared to speak, mostly in whispered interviews decades later, it was called something else. The Echo Valley War, because the enemy they fought did not speak, did not negotiate, did not fear, and because the screams of those 9 days still echo in the valley where it happened. The signal that should never have been found. In the early summer of 1955, intelligence units detected a series of low-frequency bursts in the remote highlands of Montana. At first, analysts believed they were Soviet transmissions leaked across the pole. But when the Navy's ELF, extremely low-frequency, research teams decoded the pattern, they realized the signal wasn't Russian. It wasn't man-made. The readings matched no recorded communications system, no natural seismic activity, and no known atmospheric anomaly. A confidential memo from the Office of Naval Intelligence described it as an oscillating harmonic emission of unknown origin, repeating every 17 minutes, with layered sub-frequency data suggesting intentional structure. The coordinates pointed to a stretch of uninhabited land near a narrow canyon system locals called Echo Valley, named for the way sound bounced unnaturally between its stone walls. The U.S. military acted quickly. A joint task force was assembled, and a 42-man reconnaissance unit was flown into Montana under strict secrecy. They expected to find a Soviet spy station or a geological anomaly. What they found instead was a hole. A perfectly circular shaft, 40 feet across, bored straight into the earth, smooth, glass-like, and descending so deep that flashlights died before reaching the bottom. It emitted a faint vibration, the same frequency as the mysterious signal. Major Alan Brooks, commander of the task force, wrote in his classified field log, "The ground feels alive. The valley feels wrong. Men report vertigo, nausea, and a ringing in the ears before even reaching the rim. The rocks vibrate. The air hums. We are standing above something unnatural." The first night. At 2:13 a.m., soldiers at the perimeter heard a low rumble rising from beneath the earth. The signal detectors went wild. Radio equipment screamed static. Compass needles spun violently. Then the ground cracked. The glass-smooth shaft split open like the iris of an eye. A column of blinding blue-white light shot upward, and something climbed out. Private Henry Lewis, one of the few survivors, later described the moment in a trembling voice. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It wasn't mechanical. It was like light wearing armor, like something that learned how to walk by watching shadows. The creature, if it could be called that, stood nearly 9 feet tall. Its body was made of interlocking plates that glowed from within, shifting like molten steel. It made no sound. It simply looked at them. Then more emerged, one after another. By dawn, 32 of the beings had risen from the shaft. Project Iron Signal had encountered the unknown. By noon, it became a battlefield. The first attack.
Machine guns did nothing. Bullets melted against their armor. Explosive rounds deflected off invisible forces. Even the 75mm recoilless rifle only knocked one creature back a few steps. The beings never rushed, never panicked. They advanced with eerie precision, as if studying human tactics in real time. And then they finally attacked. Light surged from their bodies, blinding arcs, slicing like blades of heat. 14 soldiers died in the first 30 seconds. Major Brooks ordered a tactical retreat. They fled deeper into the canyon system, using the natural stone walls as cover. But the walls betrayed them. Echo Valley amplified every sound. Footsteps boomed like thunder. Breathing roared like wind. Every movement was a beacon. The beings navigated the echoes flawlessly, as if they had been here before.
The lost 2nd Platoon. A 9-man platoon led by Lieutenant Harper vanished on the 2nd day. No radio signal, no flares, no gunfire. Only their footprints remained, perfectly normal for the first 40 yards. Then abruptly, they stopped. All 9, as if each man simply ceased to exist. The ground was undisturbed. No drag marks, no blood, no signs of struggle. Major Brooks wrote, "It is as if something erased them from the world." That night, the beings stopped attacking. They watched. Dozens stood on the canyon ridge, bodies glowing faintly in the dark, observing the soldiers below. It was worse than fighting. They were waiting.
Reinforcements that never arrived. By day 3, Brooks requested emergency extraction, but the reply shocked him. Request denied. Hold position. Reinforcements inbound. But no reinforcements came. Not on day 3. Not on day 4. Not ever. Echo Valley cut off every signal. Radio waves warped. Aircraft instruments malfunctioned. The canyon swallowed even the sound of helicopter blades. The unit was alone, and the beings were multiplying. The dawn before the fire. The morning of June 24, 1755, broke with an uneasy quiet that felt almost unnatural. The forest surrounding Fort Caledon stood motionless, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Birds that had once filled the air with relentless chatter seemed to have vanished. Even the distant river, normally roaring against the rocks, hummed only a muted whisper. Captain Elias Monroe had not slept. The reports from the scouts were troubling, more troubling than the colonial leadership in Boston would dare to believe. According to them, the French were not only regrouping, but had been joined by warriors from 5 separate nations. Their numbers were not clear, but the scouts described seeing more campfires than stars above the tree line. Inside the walls of Fort Caledon, soldiers moved with a tense rhythm. Boots pounded the dirt, crates of ammunition were hauled to defensive positions, and whispered prayers filled the barracks. The fort was barely 7 years old, a symbol of British expansion and a target the French desperately wanted to erase. Elias knew this, and he knew something the rest of the colonies didn't. The French hadn't come merely to reclaim a piece of land.
They were after something hidden beneath it. Elias stood atop the western watchtower, staring across the valley. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Grant Howell, climbed up behind him, out of breath. "The men are ready, sir," Grant said, wiping sweat from his brow. "But they can sense it. Something is coming. Something big." "War always comes big," Elias replied, though the hollowness in his voice betrayed him. "Sir, you saw their fires, didn't you?" Grant pressed. Elias didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the dark line of trees. "We're outnumbered. If they strike at dawn tomorrow, we hold the walls. But if they strike tonight, we may not even see them coming." Below them, the fort's physician, Dr. Abigail Hayes, moved between the soldiers, checking bandages, preparing herbs, and offering soft words of reassurance. She was one of the few women allowed inside military grounds, an exceptional healer known throughout 3 colonies. But even she could not quiet the fear stirring through the ranks. By late afternoon, storm clouds gathered overhead, rolling in like massive ships upon a dark sea. Thunder cracked, rain poured down in sheets, and in that chaos, the first sign appeared. A lone French scout, wounded and delirious, staggered out of the forest, falling face first into the mud outside the fort's main gate. When the guards rushed to lift him, he whispered only one word before losing consciousness: "Run." Elias felt a chill rush down his spine. Had this man escaped from something, or been sent as a warning? As night fell, the rain abruptly stopped, replaced by a blistering silence. A thick fog rolled across the valley floor, unnatural, heavy, almost glowing. Elias ordered the torches lit, and flames flickered across the battlements, reflecting in the mist like restless spirits. Then the sound came. A horn, deep, ancient, not French, not native. Something older. The soldiers froze. Elias felt the sound vibrating through the wood beneath his boots. "Grant," he whispered, "that's not a battle signal I've ever heard." Before Grant could respond, a second horn answered, this time from behind the fort, from a direction that should have been impassable. And in the fog, shadowy figures began to move. "Positions!" Elias shouted, his voice cracking through the night like a whip. Torches flared, muskets rose. The battle for Fort Caledon, the battle that would change the fate of a continent, was about to begin. And the horrors hiding in the fog were unlike anything recorded in the pages of American history. The fog of the unknown. The first musket shot ripped through the fog like a lightning bolt. A young soldier named Thomas Keene, barely 17, had fired it prematurely, his trembling hands betraying his fear. The echo of the shot bounced across the valley, swallowed by the dense mist. "Hold fire unless ordered," Captain Elias Monroe roared. But the fog seemed to mute his words, stealing their strength. Shapes moved inside the pale curtain, silent, gliding, unnatural. They did not walk like men. They drifted. Lieutenant Grant Howell gripped the